Alright, so today's video, we're doing Reddit Reacts. Always a good time, always fun to go on here, see what questions people have, do our best to answer them. So yeah, if you haven't subbed to the YouTube, leave a comment, all that helps. Here we go. So the first question here was from, what was this, Zera Knight, says, what makes a hero no skill, and what are some examples? I've been playing Overwatch for a few months now, typically as a support player, and I feel as if I keep seeing the same heroes being played, especially in my low ranks. Think Sombra and Moira. So I do want to stop for a second here, and the reason why I think you see a lot of Sombra and Moira isn't necessarily where you're like, oh, no skill, etc. Sombra is like the default. Do they have a tank? If they have a tank, yes, I'm going to go Sombra. And I'm not even joking. I think in quick play, you see this a lot, where players are constantly thinking that they need to go Sombra against a tank. In quick play, it happens all the time. Chat knows it. Every time we play quick play, I see a Sombra, like, immediately. So I think the reason why you see a lot of Sombra is because, like, one of the default ways to play in some ranks right now is if they have a tank, I'm going to go Sombra. Then, Moira, yes, while it's easy to be able to, like, use your abilities, do damage, etc., I find that Moira right now is the one hero where a lot of players will feel safe going Moira when they're getting dove and no one's helping them. In metal ranks, you know, whether you're in bronze, silver, etc., getting your teammates to peel for you is a lot more difficult. Is your option to finish the game with 20 deaths on Ana, or is it to go a hero with more mobility? So a lot of players' default decision is to go Moira. I mean, Kiriko might be in there more now, but I feel like players on Kiriko will still die a little bit more because the way that you have to survive is also relying on your teammate to swift step to. And let's be honest, in some ranks, the position is just not good. So Kiriko will struggle a little bit more because you have to rely on your teammates being in a good position, but a lot of the time when you swift step, what happens? Your teammate is in a bad position, and then you get rolled there. Moira, you can kind of dictate where you go a little bit more, so that's why you see a lot of Sombra and Moira. I know that's not necessarily your question, but I just wanted to kind of talk about that because you mentioned those two heroes. You said, I've made it my goal to climb the ranks while trying to venture, no pun intended, away from these heroes, as I feel as if they are a crutch sometimes, but I need a somewhat complete list and hopefully a definition to abide by. I mean, those heroes aren't necessarily crutches. I mean, I see Moiras all the time. I do think as you climb, you want to definitely shift your hero pool a little bit in the sense of, like, don't think of it as avoid playing these heroes. Think of it as adding to playing these heroes, right? You have to look at, like, the larger picture of this, of you want to keep climbing and you want to get to where you want to get to. But, like, each rank is going to have its own, like, ups and downs and journeys. It's okay if you want to play Moira in bronze to get out of bronze, right? You don't have to sit there and try to force play an Ana if you feel like it's like an uphill battle. Like, go Moira, why not, right? Heck, they have a wrecking ball in your backline in bronze, and the only way to stop them is to go Sombra. Go Sombra. Like, well, there's nothing wrong with that, right? And if people get mad at you for, like, playing all these, like, you know, these heroes that they consider, like, no skill, etc., like, can it be frustrating to play against heroes that have, like, a different, like, skill floor, etc.? Yeah, of course, right? Like, you want to have that, what people call, like, skill expression, etc. But, like, at the same time, like, if you go Sombra Moira and it's working for you, go for it. Like, think about this. It's more than likely, hey, and if you do this, great. Going from bronze to, let's say, GM is going to take a while. So you have plenty of time to learn heroes, learn new heroes, add to your hero pool. Don't take these heroes out of your hero pool because you think they're going to be a crutch later on. I hope I'm answering that well for you there. It's like, there's zero reason to remove these heroes from your hero pool. Just add to your hero pool, right? Maybe you don't default go Sombra every game, but it's in your back pocket if you need to. Cool, I can answer for the Overwatch community. We have here in the number one comment, says, an Overwatch hero is no skill when they kill me, use their abilities, diff me. Yeah, I agree. That's it. This is from Arya saying, the stats don't mean anything. This is in quotes. They don't mean everything, but they mean something. But they could be better. The thread says, this idea that stats don't mean anything is annoying. Of course, there's not a one-to-one relationship between good stats and a W, but they are somewhat of an indication. I mean, like, yes, of course, but, like, I think at least on my side of things, it's not about the stats don't mean anything. It's that people hard focus too much on the stats. And what I mean by that is, Sombra's a great example, right? When Sombra has way less damage, people are constantly yelling at their Sombra players saying, oh, you're not doing damage. But, like, you don't need to do damage as Sombra as much as you would Soldier 76. Your uptime is way different. So that's where, like, the stats discussion comes into place. Of course, if you hit tab and their Widowmaker is 40-0 and your Widowmaker is 0-22, there's clearly a problem there, and you can understand where there's going to be an issue, right? Like, if they're struggling. I have a little bit more of a strategy where, like, if I find that my teammate is struggling, I'll look for ways to try to enable them or take away some of that. I sometimes use the stats more along the lines of like seeing where somebody might be getting dove a lot or someone on my team is getting rolled, and that allows for me to adjust my playstyle, right? Because I can't see everything, but at least the stats can do that. But I'll keep reading this. Also, I think they could mean more if Overwatch made them a little more dynamic. Right now, it's kills, assists, damage. Or sorry, it's kills, assists, and deaths, then damage, heals, and mitigation. For everyone, that's weird. Mitigation is irrelevant for so many heroes, just a dead stat. Yeah, mitigation just is, it doesn't even... I don't even think you need to see mitigation, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's cool to see that I blocked 55,000 damage on Circuit Royale, but that's just Circuit Royale. Similar, heals, similar, dude, this word to me has been such a struggle my whole life. I don't know why. It's similar in the sense that heals are irrelevant for all but 2 of the tanks and all but 2 of the DPS. Correct me if I'm wrong. As in, like, seeing how much heals you have. I mean, I see what you're saying because of the balance of damage and heals, but, like, it can be still good to see. I don't know. I think seeing that stat's fine. So why not make that hero-based or at least role-based? For Mercy, the 6 column instead of mitigation could show res count. Even the damage she does is maybe not as important as the damage she amplifies. For Ashe, it could be accuracy instead of mitigation. I see what you're saying. So showcasing some of the stats on here, getting rid of, like, stats that don't matter. Like, mitigation just, like, feels useless to most roles. So why not have something on there that's, like, more relevant to the role? I mean, it can make sense to an extent. It also depends how much they want to see, how much they want you to see. Like, for example, you say, like, this is a tough one, because you mentioned you want to see, you say, an Ashe with lots of damage doesn't necessarily mean a good Ashe, but an Ashe with good accuracy, that means something. You could say, hey, I hit my shots, y'all didn't finish them. See, now you're adding another dynamic, right? What if they have a Roadhog? I could sit there and farm my accuracy all day long on the frontline tank, and then be like, "Yo, look at my accuracy. I have 69% accuracy. What are y'all doing? I'm doing my damage." But in reality, you're just farming different like heroes in front of you, or you're taking way less shots than let's say an Ashe with 45% accuracy does, but the Ashe with 45% accuracy actually is getting more value because they're just having way more uptime. You see what I'm saying there? Why some of the suggestions can be good for this, like with the Mercy one. Saying like going purely on accuracy, people can game that all day long, right? They can just be like, look at my accuracy, when in reality, like, you're just farming a tank in front of you the whole game. Some heroes may do some damage or some mitigation, but it's not really relevant to their usefulness. I mean, I can agree with mitigation not being there. Okay, Torb can theoretically get mitigation, but do we care? Wouldn't the stat like turret uptime be more relevant? No, because turret uptime isn't really... Turret uptime is more on the other team than the Torb. But yeah, you can have some super cool Torb spots. But like, do you get what I'm saying? Like, I like the idea of moving mitigation, but I think you need to look more into the categories you're going here. Like, turret uptime could just mean the other team doesn't shoot the turret. The next game, the Torb can put the turret in the same spot, but the team shoots it. In tanks, mitigation is relevant to Rein. Heal isn't. We can instead show his melee damage and then number of pins or pin accuracy. Percentage of successful pins. Lots of pins is usually an indication of a good Rein. Well, if lots of pins is usually an indication of a good Rein, then my Rein is next level dominant. At least more often than you can say for a high mitigation Rein just by the stat alone. But see, this is the problem. Right now, like for example in top 500, a high damage mitigation Rein is going to dominate more than the pin Rein. Now keep in mind there are pin Reins that are working, but like most Reins, if they want to actually win games right now, in top 500 are going the AFK style, where you just hold your shield, and then you finish the game 10-5 with 7,000 damage and 35,000 damage mitigation, because no one all shoots the shield, right? For Sombra, it can be damage, percentage of time spent invisible, and number of hacks. For a Yari, it could be damage, heals, and turret heals separated. You get the picture. The stats can be more relevant if Overwatch shows you more relevant stuff based on heroes or roles. They already keep track of all this, by the way. You can see them as the player of that hero, but if it was shown to everyone, maybe that Mercy diff comment would prove false. Well, one, your Mercy could have 87 limbs, 35,000 healing, 22,000 damage, 1 death, and lose the game. And if someone on the team has already decided that the Mercy was the issue there, they're going to say Mercy diff regardless. I can agree with one thing, that like they could find ways to implement more stats. Some of the suggestions for the stats just don't make as much sense for that. But yes, I do think like you could adjust it a little bit. Number one comment here someone says, the numbers don't lie and stats don't mean anything are polar opposite views that are both wrong, if held to literally. Numbers require context to interpret properly, but players use numbers too often to skip over the time-consuming task of analyzing the context. And when you're actively in a game, there's no way to actually know the full context. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. It's basically saying that, like, there's so many variables to why the stats are how they are that players won't even have the time nor take the time to recognize why the stats are the way they are. So they just like look at like they see a number and that automatically dictates what's going wrong. But in reality, there's more to it, more context. So we have this one from Swanee saying, how many of you have specific characters you use for certain maps? For example, I quite like Ana in Sigma, though still not good at Sigma, working your projectile aim. On Circuit Royale, especially Ana, as there's quite a lot of places I can sit back and just snipe. That's good. Lucio on Ilios because boops, and it's really fun to speed around like crazy along with Doomfist. I'm terrible at him, but punching people down the big hole is just awesome. I know King's Row is Reinhardt territory for a lot of people, but I just can't do it. He's way too hard to be strong with I don't get him. King's Row for me, I always pick Orisa. Same deal with Route 66. I don't know why, but whenever I'm on that map with her, I do really, really well. D.Va and Moira everywhere else is their confidence heroes. I don't know too many good ones that fit certain maps, to be honest, so I'm intrigued in whatever you do. I look at it in a different way. My hero selection is based off of like if a map has high ground control and if it doesn't. So a map like King's Row, I would play more like Sigma, Zarya. You could go Orisa, Reinhardt, etc. because there isn't as much high ground. Granted, teams have still make that work. So it's very map dependent. Like, for example, if I go into Dorado, I'm not going to play Zarya for the most part, right? Maybe third point, you can get away with Zarya. First point, if you really want to get wild. But like, when I load into a map like Dorado, I know I'm going to play more mobile-based heroes, right? Like a Winston, a D.Va, heck, even Wrecking Ball. Or you can play Doom, right? It's going to be more mobile-based heroes that can get to high ground easily. On a map like Junkertown, or let's say Havana, I know it's a dominant sniper map. Even Circuit Royale, I'm going to go Sigma, right? The reason why I go Sigma on those maps is because it's good against snipers. So a lot of what I dictate it is based off of like what the other team's dominant hero selection can be. I go the heroes best for that. So that's more of a good way to go about it. Like you say, like King's Row Rhine, even King's Row Rhine isn't a go-to as much anymore. I think it's more about the strength of what the meta is at the time and just going for maps based off, based off of if the map has high ground. First point Eichenwald, I might go Sigma. Second point, I might go D.Va. Do you see the difference there? It's based off of like the map geometry, how the map's created, like is there a dominant high ground? And that's more of what you want to go off of than like, oh, by default, I'm going this hero on that map. Although, granted, like, for example, Sigma on Circuit Royale is a good choice. So you have the right idea, but I think look at it more of like if there's high ground, low ground, what's more important, etc. The number one comment here from Vortex says, if it's Circuit Royale, I play Reinhardt. If it's Ilios, I play Reinhardt. If it's King's Row, I play Reinhardt. If it's Route 66, I play Reinhardt. And then they say Reinhardt. I respect it. Yeah, that's fair. All right, here from Celebrity, we have, who is a good tank to learn to start? I'm very new to Overwatch. And by that, I mean I have only been playing for a couple months after switching over from COD. I've been playing pretty decent as a DPS and wanted to try tank out mainly due to the fact that their abilities look more fun than the DPS that I'm good with. You're in for a treat, by the way. Just wondering who would be a good tank to start with and maybe a few tips just to get me started. Thanks in advance. Honestly, I think Winston. Here's what I like about Winston as a starter tank. And let me explain why. Winston teaches you about map control. Winston teaches you about good bubble usage or shield usage. Winston has good survivability. You don't have to worry about your aim as much on Winston, so you can like focus on other stuff. And you can also learn that even if you're tanky, you're not tanky. I think you can get all of that there at once. I'm not saying it's going to go well, but I do like Winston as a starter tank. You can always go Rhine, maybe Sigma. People say D.Va, but like the problem with D.Va is I feel like D.Va has a really, like I want to look at like the skill ceiling of D.Va. Like D.Va is, I think you need to understand the map control dynamic of tanking before D.Va becomes like the go-to. And the reason being is every time we watch a spectate in D.Va and like medal ranks, they tend to play like a Reinhardt playstyle. And like, you just can't get away with that on D.Va consistently. Winston can teach you a little bit of like, okay, you can't play this like, sit on the front line style. You have to learn that. And then other heroes kind of play into that. So I'd say like a Winston, probably Winston, Sigma, or Reinhardt are good starter heroes for you. You said Winston can get hard countered though. Every tank in the game can get hard countered. That I can't even look at that anymore. Rissa can work too. Only problem I have with the Rissa is Rissa's been nerfed recently. So like, you need to play Rissa a little bit smarter. But yeah, I mean, I can see that. In the end though, play whatever you think is fun to you. Don't like lock yourself into one tank if you don't enjoy it, right? But those are my suggestions. That's a long sentence. Okay, that's a good one. Good response there by that person. So, all right. This one says from Thomas, how should I play Junker Queen in comp and not get yelled at? Well, it's pretty easy. It's pretty obvious. Just go 50-0 and don't make any mistakes as a tank, and you literally won't get yelled at. You probably still will be. You'll do something wrong. Hello, my friend. Sorry, I just read that as hello, my friend. It's hello. My friend and I recently got back into Overwatch. Junker Queen is still the only tank I really like to play and have done so in unrated games. Currently, I only play competitive in support queue, but I want to try Junker Queen in tank queue. However, I think I've heard people not really liking Junker Queen for competitive. I'm nervous of playing her in comp since I generally feel more pressure due to being the only tank opposed to one of two supports. What should my playstyle be for her? Should I just act as a third DPS? Should I target the enemy tank or squishy enemies? Thanks for any help. Yeah, good question. The answer to that is yes. Welcome to tanking. There's no direct way that you're going to want to play tank. The hardest part about tank is having to make an adjustment based off of what's happening. The truth is, Queen plays fairly well in comp in most ranks. If you ever hear, like in top 500, where somebody's complaining about a tank, you have to remember that in top 500, the way that the game is played is a lot different. It's very meta-based. Now, the reason why meta is so strong in top 500 when played correctly is that it's about the teamwork aspect too. It's not just about the hero selection, it's about the teamwork aspect. Something that gets lost in translation a lot of the time is that players see the meta. In like Silver, they want to play the meta. They get all of the heroes they want to do that, and they go, what's going on? Why aren't we doing this? This is the meta comp. But the problem is that the meta comp also requires a certain type of teamwork that makes that comp strong, right? I can go Mauga, but if I have a Lucio Zen comp, I'm probably going to get rolled eventually because it just isn't a comp that can keep the Mauga alive during the downtime of Cardiac Overdrive, right? So I think like at this point, if you want to play Queen in ranked, go play Queen. If you feel like you're confident on Queen, play Queen. Playstyle-wise, it's going to change based off of what they run. Like if you're playing Queen and they're running a Sojourn Widow comp and their tank is Wrecking Ball, I want you to think about what you're going to see. You're going to not see much of anything, right? So what's your playstyle there? Well, you either want to peel for the ball because your knife can hit them pretty easily, or you need to find ways to create that close the gap, etc. So it's going to be something that every game is going to be different for you, and I think that like once you start to like look into that aspect of playing Junker Queen, you'll get better in general. But like here's the truth with the way that tanks is. People get yelled at all the time on tank. Everybody expects tank to do everything. People are going to want you to be aggressive. They're going to want you to play passive. They're going to want you to take no damage. They're going to be mad at you for doing no damage because you're taking no damage. They're going to be mad at you if you take no damage. They're going to be mad at you if you do take damage. They're going to be mad at you if you do this, if you do that. And unfortunately, that's tank as of right now in the current tanking style, unfortunately. So hopefully eventually they get back to a better spot of that. Number one comment here is definitely target squishies. I can agree with that. Essentially get kills and don't die. Don't waste shout when it won't benefit your team. That one's 50-50, but I can see that. Don't miss your knives or your axe. Wow, yep. Just make sure you're actually providing value and not pointless poke damage. Actually, poke damage is actually pretty decent. And when people tell you to go for squishies, I really need people to understand this a little bit. It's easier said than done. Like, if you expect your tank to constantly be on squishies, if their positioning is even remotely decent, it's not that easy. Third Policeman says, reasons to criticize tank play. Sometimes I will get flamed by people on my team, but it's not clear what I'm doing wrong. I know people get salty, but I've been surprised every so often how much people blame me when I seem to be doing as well as anyone. I know stats are not the best indicator, but if I have a similar kill death, damage, good mitigation, what are some things I could be doing that would be an issue? I also like how, like, we just had the discussion about, like, mitigation and, like, scoreboard in the same discussion point here. My guess is not pushing enough because I've been focusing on not dying lately, but wondering if people had general tank behavior that annoys them. Okay, so the problem with tank right now, and I've been talking about this a little bit more. Keep in mind, when we're talking about tanking in general, it's not even like this. This is like just a complete side rant. It's not the tanking is not about the strength and power of a tank right now. I think that tanks have that. It's how tank feels. So a lot of what's happening to tank players now is every tank player is getting confused because anything you try to do as a tank player can get shut down very easily, right? I don't know if that's like a mobility creep thing, for example, right? Where like every hero can get away from you now, so as a tank you can't push in. So you end up getting stuck in the mud as tank more often than not. And I call the stuck in mud play style, where you kind of like go to make a play, but then you take too much damage, and then you have to hide, and then you get stuck there, and then your teammates don't know how to react to any of that, so they just sit there in the middle of the open, get rolled, and they go, oh, what are you doing, tank? But the reality is, you already would have been dead by then if you didn't go and hide. So every player is expecting tank players to sit here and be able to create all the space, but the problem is that you have to create space in, like, increments. It used to be that you can kind of, like, push in, but now you have to do it incrementally. And the problem is that it's not a fun playstyle for tank players. So, like, a lot of players are looking at their tanks and assuming their tanks are doing nothing, but the problem is that just tanks can't get to people because there's so many people that can get away. Even if I go for a Sojourn and I spend 3 years to get to that Sojourn uses one ability and they're gone. Go to a Widow, they're gone. Go for a Tracer, they have their cooldowns. Go for a Sombra, they translocate out. Go for a Soldier, you go, why are you playing Soldier? You probably get them, right? You know, you go for all these heroes and they just get out and then you get stuck. And then you can't do anything because you're DPS passive the whole time. You have to get the DPS passive off you. You have to hide behind a wall. So, like, the problem you run into is not the ability
One day I'll reach that 2-year mark.
The problem you run into is it's not the ability of, like, the strength of your hero. Like, you can get a limbs when you have the opportunity to get a limbs. But it's getting to them. That is the problem. And the way that they've made Overwatch currently is that tanks have to take incremental pushes to get to them. So for every, let's just give an example. For every rotation for a support or DPS where you can just do like, okay, I'm peeking you can do it 3 times, a tank can only do it once. And that's the problem that tanks are running into, and that's why you're hearing complaints on tanks, is that like, for every 3 plays that you can attempt to make as like a DPS, you can basically only do that once on tank. And that's the problem that people run into. So how do they solve that issue? I don't know. And like you said, the reasons to criticize tank play, I mean, listen, is your tank charging in over and over again and getting rolled? You know, is your tank standing in the middle of the open and taking too much poke damage consistently, etc.? If they're doing that, that can be a problem, right? And you're like, hey, tank, can you go hide behind a wall more? And I can see that. But if your teammates are getting mad at you for playing cover and needing time to get healed up and to get back into a team fight, that is the problem and the disconnect that's happening in Overwatch right now, where everybody expects their tank to just go in and tank. It's just not possible. Most of the time, it's just not possible. You just get rolled. Now, obviously, there's outliers to that. Like, people go Roadhog a lot because Roadhog has survivability. Mauga is obviously been a go-to. There's going to be those heroes that are more like statues. But even then, players get mad at the statue-based tank. So that's the problem with tanking right now. And it's funny because, like, it's not... I circle back at that. It's not about increasing damage on tank. It's not about giving more HP. It's just about how do you get rid of that feeling of, like, you're just there to enable the possibility of your teammates doing something, but you're basically just waiting for something to happen for you to do something. It's a tough one. Number one comment here says, if you push when your team doesn't want to, they think it's your fault for being too aggressive. If they push when you think you should be giving up space, they'll think it's your fault for being too passive. If you play in harmony with your team and win, they assume it's because they did their jobs well. If you play in harmony and lose, they often assume it's because someone else was a problem. The biggest leap in my tank play came checking teammate position before engaging and pinging my target, or desired position when I go in. Sometimes it helps them see what I'm trying to accomplish. The hard part is understanding that you are the problem sometimes, and you have to be very honest in your game reviews. I like to watch replays from the perspective of other players to see if that changes my opinion of my play. It's a good comment. The problem is that most players don't watch any of that back. So, like, in real time, even if you're fixing your play style, it's still going to be frustrating if, like, you're playing the way that is technically correct, and your teammates are still telling you that you're terrible and you're playing wrong to do this and do that, and then you look at their profile, and they have 0 minutes on tank, and that becomes the problem. Is a lot of players are in the mindset of like, oh, this is what a tank should do, but the actuality of what a tank can do is different from the mind, like what players are assuming a tank can do, and that's the issue, and that's where the disconnect is. And until they make tanks get to a spot where, like, you know, they don't have to play hide and seek or prop hunt all day long, you're going to run into this issue where players are constantly asking for things to shift. This one says, from Strawberry, what to do as a support player if the tank isn't doing anything. I encounter so many games where the tank can't kill anything or stay alive longer than 5 seconds unless I heal bot and never take my eyes off them. Keep this in mind for support players. Have you noticed that since Season 9, supports felt a little bit worse? I'm not saying from a balance point of view of like your damage numbers, etc. But supports felt a little bit worse. Why? Because it's that exact reason. Because tanking has gotten a lot worse, so you're forced to go into heal bot mode. That's why it feels worse. Because like it's a combination of, because they made tanks a bit worse and tanks are struggling, supports are now forced to just go into heal bot mode. Like even more so. You don't even have time to damage. So eventually, a lot of what happens now is a lot of supports to say heck it and let their tanks die even more now because they just want to do something. I'll continue on with this. You say your question is, what is the strat in these games that I should be doing? Should I be holding their hand and dumping all the heals in them to keep them alive and contribute to the game? Unfortunately, yes. Should I just completely ignore them and let them die and focus on killing people myself? Yes. See? I didn't even know that was the second part of the question. I knew that was going to be the answer. Well, yeah, why not? I mean, I always feel so powerless in these situations and frustrated because I don't know what the objective strat I should be taking is. Yeah, ask your tank player about that feeling. They're going to tell you the same thing. Should I be switching to a specific hero in these situations? No. I usually play Moira. Hey, you can go Ana. Ana can help with burst healing, but you're gonna every time I play Ana and I have to heal a tank and they take a bunch of damage, I feel like I did an arm workout. So if you're willing to do that, then yes. I don't know. I'm at the point now where like you're like, yeah, should I let the tank die? Yeah. Should I heal the tank? Yeah. You're gonna have the same experience for the tank. The tank's gonna be stuck in the same spot. So you wish I was a little bit more serious about these questions. What out of curiosity, what is it that you're looking for in that? Because that's the direct answer. Because if you watch me play tank games, that's exactly what's happened. There's not even like a serious response to that because I'm giving you the exact response to that. There's no direct way right now. This is why tank is stuck. You get what I'm saying? Like that is the problem. The tank is struggling because of these many issues that players are saying, and I'm saying that what they're saying is a valid opinion about where the tank in and what they're feeling as a support is. If you're asking me, like, well, how do you solve that? I don't know. And I don't know how to answer the question sometimes of these because there's nothing they can solve about the tank doing that. The tank is still going to not be able to kill anything, and the tank will struggle to stay alive longer for 5 seconds. So if your options are go into heal bot mode and not heal the team, if you let your tank die and go for DPS, that can also be the correct answer because tanks are going to struggle either way. So like at that point, it's going to be a decision that you have to make on that one. There's no direct answer to that of always do this or always do that. Because it's like, does your team have a Torb on your team during this and the other team has a Sojourn, right? You're going to have to go into heal bot mode more. Why are you going to have to go into heal bot mode more? Because your tank won't be able to get to the Sojourn. So you're going to get stuck there. If your team has a Sojourn and their team has a Torb, you can probably go into DPS mode more because your tank is going to still struggle to get there, but your Sojourn will put more pressure so you can help finish the limbs, right? But see that it's just so many different heroes and so many different variations that I can't give you an answer. The problem that happens here is that because tanks struggle, it creates this domino effect where every other role except, I say every other role, the support role also feels like they're struggling and then assuming their tank just sucks, when in reality, this is the tank experience right now as of in Overwatch 2. Once again, just to point out to people, because I think this gets lost in translation, this isn't about tanks getting buffed to be able to do 80,000 more damage. This isn't about giving tanks 80,000 more HP. It's just the feeling of tank right now is a problem, and it's something that hopefully eventually they can find ways to adjust. I don't know what the answer to that is yet, because like obviously I don't want to see tanks become the raid bosses of like Season 2 Overwatch where Zarya runs over your team, because I understand that when DPS does well in Overwatch, it's good for Overwatch, but I also want to see the other roles be at least valuable to where players feel like they're just able to contribute to a win and not just fully rely on your Sojourn going 40-2. Keep in mind my examples are top 500 there, so in Silver, that could be the Moira going 35-1 in your backline. Things like that. You know what I'm saying? It says, what does D.Va do? Good question. How to play D.Va well also. It often feels that anytime I play D.Va, I just struggle. I will say D.Va's worst this season. Struggling with making an impact or making decisions that should help my team win or move the point forward / cap the point. You know what's amazing to me is after reading these Reddit questions, every tank player is asking the same question. Everybody's confused on what to do right now on tank, including myself. For example, learning when to dive, take advantage of high ground, where to be is often things I feel absent of having any knowledge of despite trying my best to find help on it. I'll stop right there at that paragraph. A lot of knowing when to dive, when to peel, it really comes down to like what the flow of the game is like. So if you're playing D.Va at the beginning of the game and you can see that you can dive their Ana over and over again and nobody's helping them, then you can be a bit more aggressive. If you find that your support line is struggling against their dive, you might want to go into more defensive-based mindset. My number one thing with D.Va whenever I go for people is I either want to force them out when I play aggressive. So like if like a Widow is high ground Gibraltar, I want to force the Widow out, I'm going to be aggro on the Widow. It doesn't mean I'm going to get the limb, but I need to put pressure on that Widow so they don't get kills, right? On the flip side of that, if our Widow is dominated in the back line and they want to be able to kill our Widow, I can now go into a more protective mode for my Widow, or I can decide to be aggressive to create space for the Widow. But if they're going for a Widow, I can play dive mode. So a lot of this D.Va playstyle, it just comes down to like recognizing each situation and then trying to make the best one off of that. I will say that D.Va is probably one of the more decision-based tanks in the sense that you have a lot to think about as D.Va, and people expect a lot out of you as D.Va. It's just going to come down to a balance of just try things, recognize if it doesn't work, and then try to reapply that the next time around. And then the more you do that, it becomes a lot easier to understand that stuff. It's not easy said as done. And you say, like, when should you do all this stuff? Even today, having thousands of hours on D.Va, you're still going to make the wrong choice sometimes on D.Va. And you're going to make the right choice sometimes on D.Va. Sometimes you're going to get lucky with the choice that you make on D.Va. My best thing is it just comes with experience. Many games, I would just feel like I stand back and accomplish very little and not take advantage of openings that a better player might have seen. Well, here's the thing. If you're standing back and you're getting nothing done, try to figure out the next level to that. And the next level to that is how much space can I take on a map without feeding? And the more you do that, your setups become a lot better, right? Like, for example, like on Dorado, I know that if I need to get a Widow, I will go right side to set up, right? I go to the right side when you're on attack, on second point. I go to the right side to set up because if I go left side, the Widow constantly can grapple away. But if I can take away the right side and then go to the other side, they can't. I take away some of their space. Do you see what I'm saying? So my point is that find your limits on each map, and then that decision becomes a lot easier. All right, for example, Dive and Ana who use sleep, but then someone else comes and helps them, and you leave with a sliver of health and having to run back to your team for heals. By the way, that is okay if that happens. If you see an opportunity and you go to help an Ana who use their sleep, and then someone else comes and helps them, you've created a mismatch for your team now. It's a 4v3. So you've already done your job at that point. You've created a 4v3. And their Ana's probably not healing at that point. You see? Or games, I feel there are no openings would often just end up playing at longer ranges and just being alt battery half the game. That's D.Va sometimes. Once again, find the locations on maps. Don't play like a Reinhardt. Also, while I do watch D.Va gameplay, it often feels very hard to apply any knowledge or strats I may want to learn / try in the game, like taking high ground. It often feels I'm just useless and I'm ignored, and I don't know how to take advantage of that situation well or do what we do there. Keep in mind, the way that I'll play D.Va in top 500 could be way different than you play D.Va in, let's say, gold. So while you can learn the mechanical side of things, especially when I play D.Va, you need to understand that a lot of what I do as a D.Va player also is based off of like a multiple chain effect of what I'm looking for. Like, I know that the Widows in top 500 are probably going to dominate. They're going to hit shots. So I need to play a little bit differently. Why am I going for high ground control? Because I need to. You may not need to go for high ground control as much. I think the habit of going for it is good, but if like your team isn't on the same wavelength as you, you also want to start to play at the pace of your team. That can also help. So I know I didn't give you quite the full answer you were looking for here on D.Va, and as much as I would love to be able to like give you a full guide on it, how to do it, etc., D.Va's a hero that when you start to play D.Va, you need to just understand that it's all about limit testing. It's about understanding about where your strong points are on maps, how to get to your strong points, and you're going to have games where you feel like you do nothing. And also, D.Va's probably the worst D.Va's been in Overwatch 2 this season. So on top of that, you also have the weakest version of D.Va we've seen in a long time. Hope the response to that can be helpful. I don't know if it quite answers your question, but I hope it helps you a little bit in being able to improve on that one. So the number one comment here says, it is well past my bedtime, so I'll keep it brief. They say, D.Va is a bully and a big damn hero. It says, target enemies that think they are safe, chase down enemies that desperately want to be somewhere else, swoop in out of nowhere to rescue your ally getting shot at, or protect your ally trying to pop off. When you destroy your mech, plink heads until you get a new one, so it's like they did nothing at all. I mean, that's okay. Basically, it describes D.Va, but it also describes exactly what we said. You have a lot to do as D.Va, so. All right, that's the Reddit React. I hope you enjoyed this one. A lot of good questions, a lot of in-depth answers. If you like this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to all 3 YouTubes if you haven't. We also do the hot takes video, so if you have anything in the comments you want to add to what we talked about today, leave a comment. Remember, leaving a comment, liking the video, all that just helps with the algorithm. We also record these live on stream. You can see the Twitch chat right below the webcam, so stop by if you haven't. With that being said, I hope you all have an amazing day / night.